Good morning. It's still morning, yeah. Almost afternoon. But good morning, Dr. Horningr.
Correct.
Horningr, okay.
Like morning.
Okay, Dr. Horningr. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Donovan Carter with the Stanley Parks Oral History Program. Today is July 11th. We're in the Pensacola Public Library, and I'm conducting this interview with
Lorena Manasturean,
Kenny Tinoco,
and Asha Clarke.
Today, we're joined by the godlike and wonderful.
Oh, no. Oops. I should have said goddess. I sit corrected.
That's right. Can you state and spell your name just for the record, please?
Gloria, Gloria. I use my middle initial of G, and my last name is Horning. Gloria Horningr, Morning Glory.
Ah, I like that. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? When were you born?
When I was born, I was raised a military brat, Air Force brat, so I've lived all over the country. I went to high school in Belgium at the NATO military base. Came back to the United States and did the undergraduate stuff and went into television news. Started off running audio for a show called Passepartout in Lafayette, Louisiana on KLFY Channel 10. We were the #1 station. And yes, there was 3. And that's when it was still broadcast. I left there and went to several other stations, ending my career in television as the senior news producer out of Las Vegas, Channel 3. And then we had that little war that broke out with Bush Sr. And we were no longer being journalists, we were being talking heads for the government. And that rubbed me the wrong way, because I'm a Watergate baby. And lived in Washington, D.C. while that was going on. So our next door neighbor was actually President Nixon's pilot.
Wow.
So, but we were on a military base. Okay, you know, it was a duplex. So seeing all the reds and stuff and things like that, I can be impressed, but, you know, they, as I say, they put on their pants the same way. Went to high school in Belgium, played sports, came back, tried my first attempt at college in Riverside, California. That didn't work. And like I said, went to Channel 10. Started off as audio, ended up in Vegas. So when the war broke out, I went to the San Francisco Bay Area. This was 1988, the first part of the AIDS epidemic. I had a brother who passed from AIDS in that first wave. So I went back to school to get my master's. And my thesis was on communication tactics of AIDS awareness organizations. And it was, well, it started off the first 10 years of AIDS, ended up being the first 12 years of AIDS. You know how master theses do. And that's what it was called. And it was the first 12 years of the AIDS epidemic with interviews, firsthand interviews with the people of the time. The Names Project, which is the quilt. My brother had a quilt, and it was right there in in San Francisco, so I could go and interview all the people and all of that. And that's when we were still carrying equipment, and I was still a one-woman band. My thing was Third World One-Woman Productions. That's the name of my company. And I wasn't doing good guy, bad guy with the Names Project and ACT UP, and I don't know if you know anything about ACT UP, but they were the militant side, if you will, of getting people's attention about AIDS. They would go to extremes, but it was an extreme time, and they didn't have time to wait. And so they got all the bad press. Well, the Names Project was this nice, pretty, and showing everybody the impact. So they're different, but the message was the same, stop AIDS. And from there, and while I was doing that, I was TAing because I know how to build control rooms, literally. And so I was TAing, and I said, boy, I kind of like this teaching stuff. And so I applied for a position at Florida A&M.
Wow.
And that was my first teaching experience. Great teaching experience. I still love my time there. And then we worked with FSU because FAMU had the School of Journalism, FSU had the production side. So we would meet in the middle and we'd broadcast our program, out of WFSU, and we did live daily newscasts. And it was really cool.
May I ask what you taught at FAM? What course did you teach?
Broadcast journalism, social issues, documentaries, radio. We did a radio show every day. And then, basic courses, especially when I first got there. You get the English course. Oh, but I don't do English. I do broadcast. Huge difference.
Yeah.
So that got me involved with the environmental justice movement at FAMU. It opened my eyes to the issues going on, and I went, wow. So I said, okay, I'm going to get my dissertation. I'm going to get my PhD. So my dissertation was on Southern Voices of Change, and it covered I-10 from Cancer Alley all the way to American Beach. And one of the places I focused on was here in Pensacola. And if you can find any relatives of Margaret Williams, she founded the organization CATE, Citizens Against Toxic Exposure, fourth grade elementary school teacher. Her son now is on the school board. They lived in the second largest Superfund site in the country. Is right here in Pensacola. And it was built around a neighborhood. Guess what neighborhood? Anybody guess? Anybody? Anybody? So it was the second largest rehoming of a community in the country. And the first one was Love Canal in Niagara Falls, New York, with Lois Gibbs. So I know Pensacola. I came back to Pensacola. There was a lot of things in between. But I came back because of the BP disaster as an AmeriCorps volunteer. And I was the public information officer for a disaster preparedness organization here. And I served almost 2 years with them, training people how to prepare for disasters, training communities how to train communities, because nobody wants to see my face all the time. And I got stuck here. And so then this little landfill thing came up called Rolling Hills. North of here, just south of the interstate, is our community is called Rolling Hills, Wedgwood, and Olive Heights. This was the first middle-class black neighborhood ever in Escambia County. Ever. Jimmy Carter cut the ribbon to this place. Anyway, so we're still in segregation. Without anybody noticing, one landfill came up, another landfill came up, another one started, and now they have 11 landfills surrounding them. And people think, well, that doesn't impact me. Well, where do you think all that water and runoff go? It goes into the soil, goes into those oysters you're eating, and there's, the pollution rate is just devastating because none of our landfills here are lined. You did
Meaning
with plastic, or it's more than plastic, but so the water can't seep into the soil. Because that's one of the big impacts, like Mount Dioxin had right down here. There was no lining, so all the dioxin, which is the main ingredient in Agent Orange, which is the ingredient that we are still killing Vietnam soldiers with and have deformed Vietnam. And so what do you think it's going to do to the kids? They're playing in dust, they're breathing it. The fetus, once it becomes poisoned, it stays in the DNA forever, so that person's children will have it, their children will have it, their children will have it, and their children will have it. So, we've got this huge, we talk about climate change, but we don't realize the people that are already being impacted by climate change in the United States. You may brush across it, and oh, look, India, how devastating it is. Well, you don't have to go very far around here where you can't get drinking water out of your own house. Your soil is contaminated, and you're eating from the Dollar General store. We wonder why we're sick, why our immune systems have changed, and that information continuously gets buried, and it drives me mad. I'm actually a very functional human being. Until you get me mad or upset.
You said that information gets buried. Who's burying it?
The owners of the media, the puppets. I'll give you Pensacola is a prime example of just how a little network works, where the bigger networks sort of trickle in. The P&J, the Pensacola News Journal, is owned by Gannett. No. They're the mother company. Quint Studer, a high, powerful businessman, runs the P&J. He's not going to have anything to do with writing about these stories. It's all about build, build, build. And that comes to my next story. And then you look at, we have one television station. Where is Quint Studer on every Friday? Okay, so Quint is sort of the poster child, if you will, of all those developers. And it's about that, which leads me to where I am today. This morning I was in court because this huge build, I live in one of those neighborhoods. I live in the tan yard. My house is 1918. It's 702 square feet. Me and my French bulldogs were just as happy as we can be. Little yard. I could do it with just a weed eater, but I choose not to. Perfect for this old lady who has really bad legs, okay? Right behind me, there is this huge acreage, and I can show you pictures or send you pictures if you want to add them. It was a green field with trees. They bulldozed it all down. It's a floodplain, not a flood zone, which means it always has water. They built up the houses 9 feet higher than the rest of us. We had 12 inches of rain June 16th. My house had 2 feet of water in it. I'm 5 feet off the ground. My 3 businesses were ruined and another house and all our cars because of a 12-inch rain. And we've always had water issues. I mean, that's a plain. But we were surrounded by water. It wasn't in our homes or our businesses. Well, I've been sort of knocking heads with the general manager over there. And it started in 21 or 22. And I was at the meeting when they approved it, and the vice president said, I don't know why you want to build in that swamp. And it goes against all federal regulations and building. A municipality, if you belong to the National Flood Insurance Program, which you better, in Florida, you have to follow certain rules of where you build, how you build, and et cetera. But there's so many loopholes in them that they can build anywhere they want. And now it's impacting us. Well, I came home one day, and I live on a very, very busy road. And all I wanted to do is get my groceries in. And I pulled up onto the side of where now is a road, which used to be a green space. And this kid said I hit him. I hit the cone, but he was on the other side of the cone. But his boss made him call the police and the whole 9 yards. They arrested me on a felony. It was dropped down immediately to a misdemeanor. And so today I thought, here we go. The city wants to put me on trial. The state, I mean, on a non-incident. There's our judicial system for you. And that's happening because of my big mouth. Because I have really, I've gone after senators and congressmen, the mayor, and the mayor, when he was the chairman, he threw me out of one meeting, because I'm just telling it like it is, and they don't like to hear the truth. And also, as you can hear from my voice, I can get very, but it's not anger, it's passion. And it's happening to so many people. And I've got, a little more resources, but Sally pretty much wiped me out. And that's what they're hoping with this trial. That'll completely wipe me out. And that's the society we live in right now.
Do you know of any other people that have been harassed like you have for speaking out?
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, this happened in the county. The county just over here, Warrington, Navy Boulevard, if you've looked at the map at all, it's just around the corner. There's a beautiful beach there, and it's just a beautiful beach. And it was a local, sort of blue-collar beach, but it was their beach. The county came in and put in all these oyster beds. And then they brought in all this junk trash sand. I mean, horrid. The people that live over there, the friends of mine, were taking videos and things like that. They'd pull out old cassettes, old discs from a computer. You remember they were plastic, okay? And it was from Hurricane Ivan. And they dredged and threw it onto that beach because they were going to stop the erosion. Well, they stopped people from walking on the beach because there was metal, there's all kinds of stuff in it. Then, the woman who had the biggest voice, or the loudest voice, they cut down her tree in front of her house that looked right out at the water and had a rope attached to it. And it had been there forever, long before she lived there. And so, next thing you know, the sheriff's department is parking around her house, harassing her, because that's what the county commissioner wanted. And then they just finished cleaning all those oyster beds. And it did nothing for the erosion. It made it worse, especially that trash sand they brought in.
Do you know when this was? What year?
They just cleaned it up, so must have been going on the last 3+ years.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned about how you're kind of, as you came to FAMU and to Tallahassee and to Florida, you became more aware of environmental issues. Can you talk a little bit more about how your activism and work during the AIDS crisis translated into environmental?
It's who's giving the message, and it's target audience. It really is. And for my students, that varied who their target audience was, because we did sports documentaries too. Okay, it just wasn't all, oh my God, I can't believe. But I can't tell you how many times we interviewed Bobby Bowden and heard the phrase, praise the Lord. I hope I'm not stepping on any toes, sorry. It was the cancer rates that I was reading, and then reading about, the first book I read was Dumping in Dixie by Robert Bullard. Classic. They were taking toxic tar and using it for road cover in North Carolina and Warren County. Well, that stuff gets hot, it gets toxic. Guess what neighborhood it was in? Guess what? And that's where I learned about all the dumping that's taking place. And I'm from Louisiana, and I know we have a bad problem over there. Horrendous, but it wasn't going to change while I was there, because oil was the industry, is the industry. And we had other issues going on, like a governor that was arrested and put in jail, and every state I've lived in, I've always thought, well, Louisiana has to be the worst. Then I get to the next state and I go, okay. And it's true. It really is. I tell you right now, as a gay woman, I'm scared to death to live in Florida or in the state. In the country with the latest Supreme Court ruling. And I just can't get, why aren't we on the streets doing something? And that's where, the AIDS activists, what they would tell me, they say, see, it's really a plan, it's strategic. Do you want to talk to them that are, throwing condoms at the National Cathedral? Or do you want to talk to these nice people over here? Oh, we'll talk to these nice people over here. But these people got things changed. And the big thing they got changed was the FDA releasing medication. Oh, well, it's going to be 10 to 12 years trial. people weren't living more than 4 years at the time, and that was long. And they didn't have time, so they were using drugs before they were certified. And that's huge. And has changed things as they are today. But y'all know that now. You can win something on Jeopardy. So, so there's a lot of little issues, but I think our biggest issues, I mean, I was just telling one of your colleagues, to stop all the water from coming off that road, the building next to me is the Mardi Gras store. So it had Pensacola, it's got bags and bags and bags, and they were all contaminated. And so I was helping the guy, one of the owners take some in, and I said, "Why are you taking these back in?" He says, "I'm going to use them as sandbags." I'm like, perfect. So I put up a silt fence, and there are double bags of Mardi Gras beads going all the way down it. And then I had them hanging off the posts. The owner was out there yesterday, or the builder, you know, and boy, if looks could kill. And so I guess that's why I'm going to trial now.
I want to also ask about, you know, you talk about target audience and getting your message across effectively, and your work in journalism and in, you know, different forms of activism have helped you kind of hone that. Who do you think, what is an effective target audience in order to kind of encourage change? And also, what are the best ways to like reach these people, do you think?
I learned, I did a summer in West Africa on AIDS and family planning. And, you know, going in there with all my ideas and stuff. And then I realized, I'm looking at 7 different countries, 7 different cultures. And that's and each culture has hundreds within that. It's not my message, it's their message. So that's where I learned, how can we best tell this story through your eyes? Because we were doing simple, the kids could use them for coloring books, and that's fine, you know. They were very simple. Well, one front would be, you know, sort of a disco ball and all this other stuff going on. So, you know, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and AIDS. And then the other one was a very quiet street of Muslims walking down the street, but you knew what was on the corner. And so it was how they saw it. And that's what helped me the most when I came here, is some colleagues of mine did a study on the 10, okay, we can put words together, 10 most vulnerable communities on the Gulf Coast for disaster. Well, New Orleans wins, as always, okay. We were number 5.
Wow, Pensacola.
Pensacola. Number 5. We were above Miami. And the reason is, well, how they were using the demographics was age, parents at home, homeowners, car owners, and things like that. And then that's the African American community. Then you have the Hispanic community, and they go, yeah, storms, so what? We swam the Rio Grande. And I'm not kidding, that's what they'll tell me. That's what they tell me. You know, what are we gonna tell our people? Well, what we haven't been through before. It's changing some in there. I hope it'll change more. But what I did is I invited my colleagues to give the presentation. They're PhD scientists. I just laid my head down. What have I done? And my colleagues around me, in fact, I saw one this morning I hadn't seen in a while, just went, well, that was smooth. So what I did is I went back and I rewrote it to just full screen graphics. And then I met more and more people, leaders in the community, and I go, hey, you're going to give this presentation. And they would give it. I would just do the slides. And so they were listening to someone they trust and knew. And we trained nearly 400 people in CERT, which is Community Emergency Response Teams. And it was because they were given the message, not some white gal from somewhere else. And same with the Hispanic population.
And you mentioned earlier that you were in Las Vegas, but then you felt that the Bush War made journalists become government talking heads. And I wanted to know how you kind of navigated teaching broadcast journalism while also, trying to, I guess, impress this sentiment upon students. How did you kind of navigate your feelings about it, but then also it being almost a part of the industry?
First thing I said is news is a business. Sell me your story. Sell it to me. How are you going to get it on the newscast? Because when I was producing, there were several stories that got pulled because of the car dealership, mostly. So you've got to know who you're working for. Would you work for them? I don't think one of the Christian channels, when I was still doing this, would run out and go, let's go get her. But the other part is I wouldn't apply. I'm going to look at who I'm working with and for. And that's why I couldn't do it anymore. But I did my part in teaching. But, we can't teach moral and ethics. You've got them. You can try to raise them. People lower them all the time. But we can give you the guidelines. And then you've got to do the rest. I'm glad I'm not teaching it now. I really wouldn't know what to do. Let's do a podcast. That would be the next best thing. So that's what we all have to do.
So I kind of want to ask a little bit more about, you talk about community emergency response teams and how you trained.
Keep getting drowned.
Yeah.
Here I am again. Well, my house has been approved to be raised.
Hello.
Hi.
This is for the interviews?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The councilwoman?
Should be here. Is she here yet?
Someone invited me, but Grace, her name is Grace. This one right here.
Grace.
Councilwoman.
The interviewer. Yeah, I can come show.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I wanted to ask, so yes, your work with CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams, how has that, you talk about training, but what is it like to continually, I guess, be under the threat of emergency, weather and extreme weather? What is that like?
Beer's good.
It's good.
Well, one of the things that I do, I'm a founding member of an organization called Antiponce Alliance. Just rolls off your tongue, doesn't it? We started off as a flood form organization, and we've developed into the largest flood surviving network in the country. We now have 152 chapters, including Puerto Rico. And so what I do with them is I'm the I-10 ready gal, okay? I had a truck, I'll get another one. But I also have a trailer that is semi-self-contained.
Meaning?
I can live in it, but so I don't have to put anybody out. But we load it with goods. We load my truck with goods. And sometimes there's a caravan of us. And we make sure through my organization that we're going to the communities that aren't getting help. And that's where we head. And so we have a network. My network, I will go to Jacksonville. I've never had to. I'll go as far as Port Arthur. But usually what happens is we'll meet, like one year I took goods to New Orleans. They loaded it into an 18-wheeler and then it went on. Okay, so things like that can happen. Or we'll meet in Lafayette and that will go. But our network goes directly to the disenfranchised communities. And, you know, that gives you hope. And before the next storm that they have my house raised.
Yes.
Are there any stories or memories that stick out to you when you think about doing that community distribution along I-10 for disaster relief?
Oh, the people. The people are just wonderful, terrific. The first time was during COVID, and friends here made mask after mask after mask for them, you know, and they just loved all the different ones. So it's the people feeling not left out. And, you know, a little funny mask, you know, things like that. There's nothing you can do, and I know that, you know. And so it's that, you know. It's hard to see what they're going through. And as the temperatures get higher and higher, it's getting worse. And at Cancer Alley, they're putting in more petroleum refinery stations. That sooner or later, the Mississippi can't take it all. So that's why there's so much dead zone in the Gulf. You see, there's just all these impacts that is the snowball coming down. And we see, well, we need more bike lanes. Well, you know what you ought to do with that bike lane? You ought to put some trees there. And this town is anti-mass transit. Just, you know.
Why do you think that is?
They don't want to pay for it. The council does not want to pay for it. The county commission does not want to pay for it. And it does need to be refigured. I mean, we've got Atlanta-sized buses here. We don't need them that big. We need them to run more often. Smaller buses more often. If it's 10 o'clock, you're walking home. And we're a what kind of town? A tourist town. Who do you think is serving you? They had no way to get home. Now, Uber and everything, that's helping. But again, that's the tail wagging the dog, because, you know, they're always saying, well, we're the rich people, you know, we're the one that's paying for everything. When we would go out to eat, we're paying for their salary, because tips will cover it. So I'm paying the minimum wage as a customer. Uber, okay, she is using their car, that's wear and tear. But who's the money going to? So you're supplementing again. So we're the trickle down economics, us little people, because we pay our taxes. So this is a town of have and have-nots. It's ugly.
And I want to ask about how, or what you know of kind of the base here being, how it contributes to other environmental factors.
Matt Gaetz is our congressman. He wants to eliminate the EPA and the school board. Keep them stupid. That's the key. These schools are in the disenfranchised communities are next to these toxic sites. Children can't concentrate. And so they're a problem child. You know, they can't see well. They get headaches. Well, they're problem children. We're not looking at the base of what is really going on. And they don't care. They're going to get you out of there. They're going to clean it up to their own chagrin. And then who's going to wait on them? I'd love to have a citywide boycott just one day.
What would you boycott?
I mean, everybody walk off their jobs. You know, sort of years ago, there was a film, and it should have stayed a short film. It was A Day Without Mexicans in LA. And so the car was going through the drive-thru and nobody was there to catch it. The blower for a yard was just going around by itself. None of the glasses were being picked up in the cafeterias and the restaurants, showing how powerful our Hispanic population is in our country, and we don't see it. Here in Florida, watch your fruit prices go up. Kaboom. They did a series of stories of people trying to do the jobs. They didn't last an hour or two. So, it's, we gotta stop them, folks, stop them.
And you talked about your thesis, communication and AIDS, because you were in the San Francisco Bay Area during the AIDS crisis. And then very early on in the interview, you also mentioned kind of like the current state of Florida legislation as a gay woman. I wanted to know if you're seeing any, you know, like mirroring language or mirroring sentiment towards gay people that you were seeing during the AIDS crisis and now in the state of Florida.
I don't go out very much anymore. I'm getting more and more where I don't like the people around here. It's ugly. They don't hide it. They're not rude. I mean, they're not going to hit me or anything, but I just don't want to be around them, you know? Now, if everybody will come to the table and let's go storm the county, the city hall, or Tallahassee, I'm in. We're in trouble. I mean, the Supreme Court is, and Florida's not any better. I mean, it used to be where California goes, the country goes. I'm really scared. Now it's going to be how Florida goes, the country goes. And it's getting uglier and uglier. And we just don't know. It's a ticking time bomb. And with disasters and climate change, and they keep building these monstrous structures. The homes going around me are going for $700,000. I paid $80,000 for mine. But they don't care. They're going to flood me out. They don't care. You know, they're going to, you know, we've already lost one company. That's their full intent, is to get rid of us right there. And all they have to do is buy us out. You know, so they're pushing on small people, and that includes servers. Our rent around here is crazy. I mean, I could rent my place out for a couple of $1,000s. It's 702 square feet. There are no walls. You know, a friend of mine has an open apartment right now, and I'm staying in it. She rents it out for $1,200, and it's somewhat of a loft, but not much. When I moved here in 2010, nothing like that. And most of the homes are Airbnbs. So nobody gets, so the people have to live out in the county, don't have a car, there's no bus. If you watch it, you'll see how they're pushing out. And, you know, just watch people and see what's going on. Watch your city council. See who gets what. County commission. Because local politics is national politics. And whatever your Chamber of Commerce is doing is what you want to pay attention to, because they really run it. But I'm not a conspirator type person.
Yes, I agree completely. All politics is local, is what I was taught.
If we can't change it here, we can't change it up there.
That's right.
And if we can't get Matt Gaetz out with, you know, a dog. I mean, look at all the things that's gone on with him. If that'd been a Democrat, adopt an intern that's 17 from Cuba, an unmarried man. So anyway, I digress.
Yeah, you're right about that.
And that's how you know who owns the media.
Yeah.
Matt Gaetz. In fact, this used to be his home base. He moved it to Fort Walton Beach. Well, his people saw.
I want to ask a little bit. So you talked about returning to Pensacola and the BP spill, the BP crisis. Kind of, what was it like, or what was that like? I guess that time, and also, yeah, how has it been to just be consistently under the threat of that? Something like that happening again?
Oh, it's going to. I mean, we know it. Sally hit me, you know, doing what I do was one thing, and seeing all the impacts on these people and their children and their animals. Horses, cows, losing everything. We know it's going to hit. It really knocked me off my feet when I got hit. And I was just coming out of it. PTSD is real. It is real when it comes to disaster. Right afterwards, I was talking to my veterinarian. He said it took him almost 7 years to leave his house. He'd just go to work and come home after Ivan, because you don't want to leave it. What if something happens to it? Well, I'm over that now. Something will happen to it. You know, we have a climate task force the city ignores. We have an advisory board, an environmental advisory board that the city ignores. You know, and you go, oh, you think there's going to be a storm? Look at there. 12 inches. And how many people flooded? And consistently flooded. Now, we shouldn't have with that 12 inches, but now I know that's going to be exactly what happens. My next door neighbors, as I said, they have pallets. I'm taking pallets inside my house and putting everything up on it. What's left? I lost all my camera gear and Sally. I lost all my, but I saved every one of my mics. I don't know how it happened, but I lost all my mics now. It's going to happen. We just have to help prepare. I went to a great workshop in New Orleans on how to build solar generators from the ground up. It is wonderful. If you ever get to do it, do it. And I'll think of the name of the company that does it. But I mean, they took stuff to Ukraine to keep a hospital going. You know, so when you see things like that happening, you know.
Okay.
Fumble! You have hope. And some of the technology like my utility trailer, I have solar on it for everything except AC. But I got a freezer and a refrigerator, which is used nicely for medicine and stuff that we take. And there's really 2 beds in there, but I only need 1. And I can hook up to an AC. My stove is gas, and it's pump water. So I hope there's a plug nearby, because we know when we go to these places, it's hot. It's really hot. So there's hope, but not. I feel for you guys. I really do. I think every day, why am I doing this right now? Get you a truck, put everything that's left in storage, rent out the house, and just take your trailer and move on. But I don't have those kind of funds.
What, yeah, and, you kind of mentioned that a little piece of advice, or I guess ideas for, the state of just surviving in Florida now. What else do you have to say in regards to that? So, like, what would you say to yourself, looking at yourself?
Well, look at Miami. And how the communities nobody wanted to live in now are being pushed out because Miami's sinking. And the World Health Association says by 2070, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama will be too hot to live in. More heat, more disaster. And we complicate it by adding concrete. We have a beach just outside of my house called Bruce Beach. It was the African American beach in the day. And now they want to make it this great museum. And we worked really hard on cleaning the green space up and all of that stuff. And then the city comes in, tears out all the grass and the trees and concrete it. I'm not kidding. I'll show you pictures. And now that street floods. Who thinks of these things? At least put pervious concrete, but it's not. And right now, the water has nowhere to go. It's sitting on the bay. In my neighborhood, we get high tide street flooding.
Wow.
And now they just added concrete. It's developers are killing us. And then, you'd think a group from Louisiana came here. They were from all over the world. And came to take a tour of the landfills. It's where a lot of the oil mats and stuff like that got dumped. And one of the persons said, well, you never think about that. After they clean up a neighborhood or a beach, where does it all go? In someone's backyard. A lot of Louisiana stuff ended up in Mariana, which you went through on the way here. In a black neighborhood. And one of the pits in my rolling hills is where they burnt all the dead animals. Next to a very lovely trailer park homestead.
Wow.
So there's that ripple effect.
And being from South Florida myself, I'm aware of this kind of weekly flooding, the same situation that you're mentioning right here in Pensacola. So what would you say to the opinion that there's no news about the water and the flooding, but we have a lot of news about LGBTQ issues. In your opinion, what is the relationship between what's being talked about and what's not being talked about in regards to Florida news?
Well, and a friend corrected me the other day. I said, "Where's all the news?" And she goes, "Well, it seems to be being covered pretty well, the LBGT." I'm not seeing it. I don't know why. But I have tried to distance myself a little bit because I'm in my own little crisis trying to get back in my house, right? And then I found out today I'm going to trial. Climate change is political. LBGT is political. But the political on the LBGT really sort of leans over to that First Amendment won't do. Create a religion. Of course, we're groomers, but our local priest here just got arrested for grooming children. So we can't get past that rhetoric. We got to get past DeSantis. And be proud to be woke and be proud to be LBGT friendly, But they just put us as a second class Supreme Court. Anybody can refuse to serve me. Now they're going to have to prove. But with the climate change, that's why there's several reporters who have been fired. ABC News out of Los Angeles is coming here this week to talk about the climate change issue and the impact on communities being daylight flooded. Now, they're coming from LA. They got their own problems. But the networks are getting better at covering climate change. And I say that with a person who lost her TV in 2020. But I'm reading more about it. I'm seeing more about it. But the populations that it needs to be seen by are not getting it.
And what, I guess, in the vein of advice, what advice or what do you think that the young LGBTQ plus or queer community should be doing in Florida as a response to things like you mentioned, the Supreme Court ruling, the different Florida legislation? What do you think, based on your knowledge of what you've seen, in things like the AIDS epidemic, and as a gay woman yourself, what do you think young queer people should be doing?
Watching their backs. And it's such a twist because we have the Navy Air Station here. And are they going to refuse service to a woman or a man that could be obvious of their gay or lesbian that's in uniform? They could, technically. And I think that would be a great case. Know anybody? That would be a great case. It's sort of like the SEAL that killed bin Laden. Now he's a woman. But how do you explain that one? You going to refuse her service? You see, they stepped in a big hole. What about Pete Buttigieg? I see him walking into a restaurant in Washington, D.C. and saying, So, it's not, it's civil rights 2.0, or maybe 3.0. but we're losing them left and right. And so many people are suffering, and so many are not seeing it.
And on that same note, what would you say to young people who want to secure, I guess, a life for themselves in Florida? You know, they want. It's too late. It's too late. Don't.
I was in Tallahassee in 2000 with the Hanging Chad. It was a great experience for my students, great experience. But our voting system is rigged against us, especially disenfranchised communities. Just look how many polling stations they've closed and where they are. And what's the nearest town around them, and how do people get there? I mean, they're not even allowing us to drive people to the polls anymore. You know, and that's a tradition. You know? Our government is circling. I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. But we really need something. Y'all, we need y'all. Listen to these stories and go tell them, and then go into your neighborhood and walk around. Gainesville's got some lovely landfills. And American Beach. That was the fifth place I went to. American Beach was the last black beach left in Florida. And it was founded by the Lewises out of Atlanta, because they're mortician and bankers and lawyers and doctors. It was an African-American community, and this was their spot when they came down. And because the beach was still segregated, they've had those homes for hundreds of years. And then Amelia Plantation and the Ritz-Carlton came up on either side, taxed them right out of there. And that is significant because that stopped overtaxing homes that were already established. So like in my neighborhood, those homes that are going up to $600, $700, and $1 million, they can't tax me on the same rate. They have to tax me on what I paid for my house, not what it may be worth. And Maveen Betch and her sister, Julia Cole, the president of Spelman, their whole family was from there. And now, Airbnbs and stuff. You know, right here in Belmont de Villers is the Chitlin. Yeah, have y'all been down?
No.
Okay. Well, Five Sisters, I wouldn't eat there, but there's some good food around here if you want it. The Five Sisters used to be owned and operated by 5 black women. Now it's owned by a white corporation. All of Belmont de Villers is turning white. And not the nice ones.
Not the nice one. So, how do you view this relationship between, you know, you're kind of describing to me what I've learned about as kind of gentrification and how, you know, in tandem with like kind of environmental neglect, and what ways do you see those things playing out here?
I will be leaving. Unless they throw me in jail. I'm truly leaving. It's going to take me a minute, and unfortunately, probably won't make it before my house floods again. So, I'm not going to put a whole lot of effort in redoing my house. I'm going to secure it. But if you don't like plastic walls, don't come over. Well, I don't know how else other people are going to do it. I will go somewhere and help, but I can't sit and be a target.
And so from this region, where do you go?
Yeah.
So, that's my question. Where are you thinking of relocating to that doesn't have these issues?
Oh, all of them have issues. And you can look at Anthropon's Lines and see, I mean, we're on Staten Island. I mean, Staten Island's sinking. And then you got the West Hills where they're, bulldozing all the tops of the mountains and all that dust in the environment. Well, luckily, I can't go too far east. And I'm not a big fan of Tallahassee. West. And, go stay in New Orleans for a while. Or go to higher ground. Because New Orleans isn't quite where you want to be in hurricane season, but I don't know. This is really on the edge right now for me. I'm literally shopping. They have these bags that you can put on the floor and put all your furniture in it. And tie it. And it's supposed not to get wet. I don't have that much furniture left anymore. So, I mean, I know I have to be at court July 21st. That's about as far as I can get right now.
And I don't know if you're allowed to talk about your trial, but have they told you under what charges or under?
Illegal touching.
Wow. Illegal touching.
What? That sounds awful. Now that I say it out loud, let me read the exact thing. Unwanted touching. Yeah, it's a misdemeanor. At best, they could get me a year if they wanted to, but if they do that, I'm calling all y'all. But there's going to be some movement going on because sadly, but luckily, now I'm not the only talking bear. We lost a company downtown. They said, that's it, we're out. Another business is thinking about leaving. I don't know about the other business. And then the other homeowner is going to try to get her house raised. She doesn't actually live there, but it's still in a location where she too can apply. Of course, mine was approved in 2021. It's still not up.
Mm-hmm. Your raising was approved.
Right. Yeah, not raising. Yeah, they're going to have to go up about almost 5 feet.
Wow.
I'm already at almost 5 feet.
Wow. They're going to have to raise your house again.
No, that's how my house was built. Oh. And it's been there since 1918. And that's the original heart pine on most of that house.
Wow. Wow. High tide street flooding you mentioned.
Yes.
I've never heard of anything like that.
Comes out of the gutters, out of the storm drains. And I literally was walking down the street with the city engineer and the mayor, the last administration. And I said, all you need to do is to put flaps on the stormwater drains, just like boats. The water can go out, but it can't come in. And the engineer looked at me and said, well, where would the water go? I said it would stay in the bay.
And it's your job as an engineer to figure that out.
So, I'm not going to get anywhere. But I'll hang tough.
And how does this fight continue? How does it keep going?
I've sort of shut down, to tell you the truth. I just jumped off of Facebook, everything. I'm in touch with my organization, of course, and some friends, but because all the environmentalists around here want to ride bikes, but they don't want mass transit. And I believe in cluster homes, but not in a flood zone. You know?
Yes.
Less land, more homes, the better. Unless you put them on top of a creek. So. So I think I've talked your ear off.
No, this has been amazing. Do you guys have any more questions? Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Horningr.
My pleasure.
We'll now conclude our interview. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
How about them tigers?
We'll cut that one.
Thank you so much. Have a great day today. Take care.
Play the middle.